All right. I just had kind of a long discussion about the effect of psychology on society itself. I want to hone in on some of those topics I was discussing there. So I think on this one, I'm going to address, which one was it? Happiness comes from within. And so let's go back to Aristotle for a moment. This is a belief I had even before I read Aristotle. But Aristotle is good to use as an example because he's a great philosopher who actually does express this view as well. People today think that happiness is a chemical reaction. They'll say, well, what is happiness? Well, happiness is a state of mind. Well, where does the state of mind come from? It comes from chemicals, the chemical reactions in your mind. So, happiness is a chemical reaction. And so it's relative. Happiness is relative. It's subjective. Whatever it is for you, whatever makes you happy, that's happiness. Whatever you want it to be. I'll be honest, that's not a very precise definition. Tell me the definition of happiness. Whatever you want it to be. Okay. I think people have a problem. I think who says that as having difficulty knowing what the word definition means. But that's what people will say, I guess. But if they're more precise, I think what they're really saying is that the objective notion of happiness is that it is a chemical reaction in the brain. Whatever makes the pleasure center of the brain whatever excites the pleasure center of the brain, that is the definition of happiness. Okay, then do drugs. Boom, there you go. Problem solved. That's the secret to happiness. If happiness is a chemical reaction in the brain, then just get those chemicals going all the time. And the best way to do that is through what's that one drug? Ecstasy, I guess, is that what it's called? But drugs, right? Drugs is the answer, and that's it. That really would be the solution, and we should all do that. But yet, that is not happiness. I think hopefully, most of us do not believe that's happiness. For those who do, I guess we can debate that. But I'm speaking to those who don't believe that to be the definition of happiness. So if we agree that that is not happiness, well then now we have to ask ourselves, well then what is it? Is it simply anything except acquiring those chemicals by any means except through drugs? I think we're maybe getting closer to the truth actually by saying that. So let's go down that route for a moment. So let's say that the answer is to pursue those drugs through other means, like going for a jog, going for a run, maybe doing completing a project and that feeling of accomplishment at the end of that project. This is interesting, actually. This is very interesting to me. This, I think, is getting closer to the truth, actually. People will say, well, you can see that it's still the chemical. But it's not just the chemical, because if it were just the chemical, it would be, if chemical, then happiness. But here we have if chemical plus something else, then happiness. So there are two conditions that are necessary for happiness to be met. The chemical is a necessary condition, but not a sufficient condition. But then the other activity would make it sufficient under this assumption. So if we're going to act under that assumption, then let's say the act of jogging. We'll make it nice and easy. So the act of jogging is something that where you kind of earn the chemical reaction. Okay, I think we're getting somewhere from that. So you have to earn the chemical reaction, and it's important that we link the reward system of the brain to activity. That way, the brain is doing what it's supposed to do. Because I think most people agree, and I think even psychologists agree on this, that the purpose of these chemicals is to reward ourselves for certain activities, and that reinforces those activities, and then makes those things part of a habit in our lives. And the more we habituate those things, the better our life is. So I think that is a closer definition. Notice already, though, this is different from just the answer that it's simply the chemical reaction. So there's chemical reaction plus some kind of activity. Now we're getting close to Aristotle. So activity, usually involves connection with the external world, right? Accomplishing something involves something, connection with the external world. Not something. Now you could do activities within your own mind. I think this might be closer to what Plato would envision. So you could sit down and do some philosophical puzzles in your own mind. Maybe sit down and meditate in the forest, and meditation might be one example, or maybe just you're thinking through life or puzzles of the universe. Maybe you're trying to figure out how the solar system works or something like that. Well, actually, I shouldn't even say that because I want to keep it all internal. But maybe you're looking at examining ideas in the mind, and from that, you derive happiness. So there you can see that you could say, well, this backs the hypothesis that happiness comes from within. That happiness is simply a choice from within. But is that the highest level of happiness? That, I think, is where I'm really pushing towards. And I think the Buddhists would say, yes, it is. It is the highest level of happiness. The problem with Buddhism and this attainment of nirvana is, my understanding of it is that much of it comes from the removal of desire. And that statement, I think, in and of itself is a contradiction. Because if you are removing desire, to do that, you have to desire to remove desire. You have to desire to remove desire, and your ultimate desire is nirvana. And if nirvana is supposed to be pure bliss, your removal of desire is actually the attainment of massive desire. I don't think that's. I think it contradicts itself, personally. At least that's my understanding of Buddhism, and maybe I'm wrong in Buddhism. Like I said, I do not know much about Buddhism, but that's what I've heard of it. So I think there's a flaw there. And then I think about, the Dalai Lama wrote this book called The Art of Happiness. And I don't mean to laugh too hard at the Dalai Lama. I think he's a very respectable person, more respectable than most people in the world, probably. I don't know a lot about the Dalai Lama either, though. I've heard that his politics might be troubling. He may have some very troubling politics. So I'm not commenting too much on who he is. I'm simply saying that this idea of happiness, this book that he wrote, Art of Happiness, I'm sure that he has some level of happiness, and I'm sure you could probably learn a lot from that book, in fact, and you could probably learn a lot from him on his ideas of happiness. I think that it's worthwhile, but I can't imagine that he's had the full gamut of happiness. I can't imagine that he's experienced happiness in the deepest sense. And it really is as simple as simply, he's never been on a date. I'm sorry, but if you've never experienced being on a date, and I don't see how you can understand happiness. I really don't. And then loving someone, and let's go with romantic love first. Romantic love, and I guess having love for a child, something like that. To say that you could find happiness in life without those things, I'm sorry, but I disagree. And on what and why do I disagree? I guess the only way I can argue it is, for now anyway, I can try to think of other arguments, but rather than creating some deductive proof here, I think you just have to experience it. Experience is truth. I hope I'm not throwing in too many philosophical ideas in one video here, but I think that if you extend the logic from, and again, this isn't really logic. It's not. if you extend the argument that was put forth by Descartes, I think therefore I am. What I think he's really saying is I experience therefore I am. I think therefore I am is probably true, but I think a better statement is I experience therefore I am. My experiencing is happening. My experiencing is happening, therefore it's true. And so, of all the things in the universe that seem to be most true, experience, I think, is the most true. You are experiencing it, and it cannot be denied. You can't use a matrix or an evil genius or any theory to rebut that, to counter that idea. What's interesting is that, believe it or not, it's not actually a logical proof either. That statement, Descartes is tapping into knowledge at such a deep level that that it's not even within the realm of logic. It's something beyond that. So yeah, I'm sorry, but I've experienced love, right? Yeah, I've experienced that, and to say that you can meditate your way to happiness, I'm sorry, but I think you're wrong. And I think anybody who's been in love would know that. I have meditated, and actually I think meditation for me is actually a very profound and life-changing thing for me, in fact. I think that finding your happiness within is important. I actually do think that it's important. So I'm not at all discounting it. Oh, I should say at all. I'm not discounting it entirely, but I am discounting it. But not entirely. There's some truth to it, yes. Meditation is enormously powerful, and it's important. And finding happiness within is powerful and important. But you have to engage with the external world. You have to find a mate. You have to have romantic love. I'm sorry, but that's... If you have never experienced romantic love, I'm going to quote a movie here, and actually, this is actually the perfect quote. Actually, I think about it for this, what I'm saying here. Meet Joe Black. Anthony Hopkins says, to make the journey and not fall deeply in love, that's not a life at all. And I fully agree with that. Absolutely, that's completely true. To make the journey and not fall deeply in love, that's not a life at all. I feel sorry for the people that the monks that meditate their whole lives away. I'm sorry, but that's not a life at all. You have to engage in love with other people, with a mate first, and then eventually children, right? And then with the polis, the city and the community. This is Aristotle, right? So you can see what Aristotle's showing you is that the very essence of human life is an engagement with the external world, because you are not a whole. You do not become whole until you join the community, until you engage with the external world. Only then do you find your purpose and meaning. Only there can you practice what it is to be human. And what is it to be human? For Aristotle, he says virtue. And virtue involves love. And so if you're not practicing virtue and loving others, then you are not finding happiness. You will not find happiness any other way. And so this is where I think modern society has gone drastically wrong in this belief perpetuated by a couple things. One, I think, is by John Locke. And it's funny because I don't even think John Locke was trying to do this. I think it was accidentally happened. I don't think John Locke was nearly the level of individualist that we have here in our society today. But his philosophy, I think, caused a lot of this. But two is psychologists. Psychologists seem to believe that, because think about it. They're like, oh, I'm unhappy. What do I do? Make friends, have a relationship, participate in the city. And then you have to hope that they do the same with you, right? That's the thing. Like you don't have control over all that stuff. People keep saying the internal locus of control. No, it's not an internal locus of control entirely. To some degree, perhaps, but there's a large degree not. You depend on them. I mean, if you have a sick society, it's not going to work. If you have a sick community and a sick family and a sick mate, all these things. If when I say sick, and I shouldn't use the word sick because it sounds too psychological. I'm trying to argue against psychologists here. What I'm really trying to say is if these people are all screwed up philosophically and are evil in many ways, and which I think is happening in our society considerably too. We have evil and we have selfishness and greed and all these terrible things plaguing these people's souls. If their souls are all corrupted, then you're not going to find happiness either. There is an external locus of control too. There are external factors that you cannot control, that are out of your control, and you're not going to find happiness until you've done that, until the external world behaves right. But what do people keep saying to do? Well, go see a psychologist. That's the answer. Go see a psychologist, and they will cure you of your mental problems. In other words, your thinking is improper, and the psychologist is going to make it proper. Oh, but he's not a logician, so he's not going to do it through logic, and he's not going to do it through metaphysics or philosophy. He's going to just do it through his science. It's just crazy. I'm sorry. Yeah. I know so many of you guys believe in this stuff, and you probably be angry at me. I'm sorry, but this is the case. This is crazy stuff. And since happiness depends so greatly on the external world, I'm going to actually make the assertion that I think most of you have never experienced it. I think most Americans have never experienced happiness in their entire lives. I think what Americans have experienced has mostly TV, a lifetime of TV and Netflix, an entire life of Netflix. The 70 years, 80 years go by, they look back on their lives, they're on their deathbed, and they say, what did I do? I watched some great Netflix. You numb the mind all the time. You don't connect with each other, but you have some connection. And so many of you will say, I found happiness, I found contentment, I got my small circle of friends, and that's contentment. And I'm still going to actually put forth the argument. I don't think even then you've experienced full happiness. I don't think you've reached your telos just by doing that. There is a joy that comes from the potentiality of a well-formed community. And most of you Americans, I don't think have ever experienced it. I think I'm only able to say this because I was lucky enough to have found something like that in England. I used to live in England, and I happened to have found the right set of friends who not only were friends, we didn't just share a bond of friendship. There was something far more than that. We found our purpose, our telos. We were engaging in virtue. We were truly accomplishing that, and it's hard to kind of remember exactly how it all happened and what true happiness is all about. But happiness is as deep purpose and meaning that comes through the community, often through conflict. Often there's some kind of obstacle that needs to be overcome. And it's won through virtue, and if you do that together with this goal in mind of achieving virtue, that's how you find happiness. And I don't think most of you have ever felt it. There's one. This can be controversial too, and I understand. I totally get you for if you disagree with me on this, but I'm actually going to make the assertion. I think that Joel Osteen, I know a weird person to choose, I know, and I can see why many might say he's flawed, and he probably is flawed in many ways, but I have to say, I think that guy found happiness. I really do. I think that he found a purpose in a telos and a meaning and purpose in his community, where he's needed and loved. He's needed, and the things that he does changes people's lives. And in that's where you find real happiness. And most of us can't find that because our society is corrupted. The polis, the city, is corrupted. So yeah. I just want to bring it all back. So I'm getting deep into Aristotle here. I don't mean to get too deep into Aristotle. Happiness is found in the external world. I'm sorry, but it is. I have meditated a lot, and I thought I found happiness at points in my meditation. But what you'll always find is that no matter what ideas you create in the mind, they're still illusions. I'm thinking of Total Recall now. Total Recall. He says, an idea in the mind is still an illusion. And I know you can make the argument that it's not an illusion. In fact, Plato would say it's not an illusion. It is real, and I actually agree with him. I do agree with him that it's real. But for some strange reason, happiness for humans depends upon happiness in the material world, not just in the world of ideas, but happiness in the world of material, which is weird to say, I guess. I mean, I'm speaking to those who are philosophers, or I don't mean to say philosophers, or the students of philosophy. Speaking to those of you who are students of philosophy. I know it might sound weird to say that I think there's some dependence on the material world, but I do think that that's what, if you agree with Aristotle anyway, that you have to agree with that claim, that happiness depends to some degree on the material world, the world of material, at least what is external to yourself. Anyway, so there you go. That's a flaw, an effect, a side effect of modern psychology, and I think it's real. It's a real shame. It's really quite terrible what it's done to us. Psychology is hurting our society, I would argue, because it's making us individualistic. And everybody just says, well, if you're unhappy, deal with it. It's all, that's for you to handle. I'm not going to help you out. I'm not going to help you out. It's happiness is all within, and it doesn't come from a bond with your community. And that is an effect of psychology. It's terrible. It really is. All right, I'm the Defeated Soul. See you around.